everyone, in the last video we have discussed about the file system versus DBMS. Today we are going to discuss about introduction to data models. Data models. This data model is actually underlying the structure of database. Actually, this data model is a conceptual tool that describes the data, relationship among the data, data semantics and constraints data. What do we mean by this? See, basically database is actually a collection of interrelated data. When we say that it is a collection of interrelated data, it is basically going to store the data. It is going to store the interrelated data. The relationship among the data is also existing. We also need to deal with the data semantics and constraints. What kind of data are stored, what kind of data are not permitted, all these things. So we obviously need data models in order to deal with the databases. So this data model is actually acting as a conceptual tool that describes the data relationships, data semantics and the data constraints. So obviously we need to design the database at physical level, logical level and the final level is view level. So we know databases uses three-tier architecture. So we need to design or we need to look into the database in the design perspective at three levels. One is physical level, second one is logical level and third one is view level, which is a final level. So we are done with the basics of a data model. Let's now see the various of categories of a data model. In this presentation we are going to focus on four different categories of data model. The first one is relational model, second one is entity relationship model, third one is object based data model and the fourth one is semi-structured data model. Of course we have other data models as well, but in this presentation we are going to focus only on these four data models. So let's start with the first data model, that is relational data model. Relational data model. Basically, database is a collection of tables and we know this table is going to collect or store the data, and these tables are also going to establish and maintain the relationships among the tables. So what do we mean by this? See, we are going to store the data in databases, where databases are collection of tables and these tables are going to store the data in the form of rows and columns. Let's say we have two tables, one is student table and another one is instructor table, and this student table is going to contain the info about the student and obviously the instructor table is going to store the data about the instructors. Now obviously student and instructor are somehow related, isn't it? The relationship is also a table in this case. So in relational model everything is of tables. The data are obviously going to be stored in the table and the relationship also represents in the form of tables. No worries, when we see some examples we will be able to understand the things. And we know basically a table contains multiple columns with unique names and multiple each column in the table we have unique names, and likewise in the database we have multiple tables and each table will have unique names. So in relational model we have multiple columns in the table with unique names, and we may also have multiple tables with unique name in a database. Now why it is named as relational model? Because in relational database management system, the relational database we refer tables as a relation, because in relational model everything is of relation. Obviously the data are to be stored in a relation or table only, and the relationship among the data and the relationship among the table is going to be stored in the relation only. And this relation model is also referred as record based model. And what is record? It is actually a fixed formats record of several types or several data types. Each record defines a fixed number of fields or attributes. And this relational model, data model, is mostly widely used data model. Current database models are based on the relation models. See, here is an example, and here the collection of fields are called records. The collection of fields are called records. The collection of these collection of fields we call it as record. The collection of tables we call it as database. The collection of database we call it as DBMS, means relational model, relational database management system. So we have done with the relational models, and we will move to the second model, that is entity relationship model, and is also referred as ER data model, or simply we call it as ER model. We know basically ER model is a collection of basic objects called entities and its relationships, and these group of collection of entities are also we call it as objects here in this case. When these entities are the collection of objects, these objects are real world entities or real world things, right? So we can say an entity is a real world thing or object, and when we say that entity is a real world thing or object, obviously each entity or each object is distinguished from other objects. Now in this ER model is widely used. Yes, like relationship model, ER model is also widely used, but the important thing to note here is ER model is widely used in database design. So this is about entity relationship model, and we'll move to the next model, that is object based model. We know object oriented languages like C++, Java, C#, C#, etc. We know all these are object oriented programming languages. Suppose if front end is designed using object oriented programming language, we need to have the back end which also supports the front end, right? So in that case we are in a need for object oriented data model, and that is why we ending up with object based model, where this object based model is actually using with the ER model with the object oriented features. In the previous data model we have seen about ER model, where we have seen everything is of entities, and where each entities are referred as an object which are real and real world things or objects. So each real world entity, the objects are distinguished from the other objects. So here we also have a variation of the object based data model, which is object relational data model, where this model is a combination of object based model and relation model, which the first model we have seen. So here person is an object, and person have the entities of name, age, address and phone number, and we can also represent it in an ER model, that is person we can call it as entity or an object which have the attributes of name, age, address and phone number. So this is about object based model, and we'll move to the next one, that is semi-structured data model. Name itself says that this data model is already semi-structured. It means it's going to be deal with the specification of the data. What do we mean by this? It means the individual data items of the same type may have different sets of attributes. Means this data model is used for transferring the data among the applications. Say if there are two different applications and data transfer needs to be done, obviously data needs to be stored somewhere, right? In the database, if we use semi-structured data model, the transferring of data among the applications is also easier, and we can clearly witness that this is contrast to previous data models like relational data model, ER model, object based data model, and this the language that supports semi-structured data model is XML, which is extensible markup language. So this is about semi-structured data model. These are the four main data models involved in the data DBMS. And the other data models also we have, those are network data model and hierarchical data model, and these are tightly close to underlying implementation, and these are very complicated complicates the task of modeling the data, and these are not widely used except old database, because these network data model and hierarchical data model are represented in the form of graphs, bars, etc. So only these four are the main things we used in the data models. Hope you like this video. If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe. Thank you.